Hi, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the breakout rooms, and we are back for our last round of plenary sessions. My name is Eva Gédon. I'm the head of data analytics and AI at Mega International, and I'm very pleased to introduce you to our guest, a special one, Sam Holzman, for a deep dive discussion into AI for enterprise architecture. Hi, Sam. Thank you so much for being here.
It is my pleasure to join you. Thank you for having me. We began doing enterprise architecture in 1972. We have been in the field in three areas. One is training, doing training work. Our major area is consulting, and we've had the privilege of working with over 4,700 organizations around the world in enterprise architecture. And recently, we also realized that most of us in the field are technology-oriented, so we introduced an area we call soft skills. In other words, how do you communicate the marvelous information that people have enterprise architecture to their stakeholders? So that's our areas of expertise.
Sam, again, it's an honor to have you with us. My discussion today with you, Sam, will cover a wide range of topics. So, Sam, as we begin our discussion, I'd like to ask you about your perspective on the integration of AI into traditional AI practices, and how do you see this integration shaping the future of EA?
Enterprise architecture is really about understanding what is required to enable the business and enterprise strategy. And within that area, there are many different options organizations can have. The question is, how do you analyze those areas as quickly as possible? So with the proper enterprise architecture, and now with the artificial intelligence tools, we can essentially simulate so many different options that we can look at various processes, various data sources, various strategies, and evaluate those faster than we ever could before. So fundamentally, from beginning of technology, we've been processing data. Now with AI, we can take that process engine and apply it in so many different areas that the enterprise architecture-driven approach will provide us with those roadmaps faster than ever before.
Yeah, interesting point. I think also that AI still today a journey, and sometimes it's like a long journey. And so you mentioned that there is data to analyze and from different sources, and it takes a lot of time. So I think that I join you on that AI can here have a significant impact on accelerating this journey. And that could be using, as you mentioned, his data to do some advanced data analytics, some automations, some recommendation systems for a better and faster decision making in the EA framework.
Absolutely. The issue is always and has been the data. And I know we'll be chatting about this a little bit later, but one of the great things about the internet is anyone can write anything about anything. And one of the problems with the internet is anybody can write anything about anything. Yeah. And so we have the situation now with these large language models that people need to set back for a moment. And that's why enterprise architecture is so important, that your enterprise architecture actually drive your usage of artificial intelligence.
So it is a very close related topics, so ChatGPT, generative AI, and we know that has gained a lot of attention lately. So the ChatGPT, this generative AI that can converse, respond to anything, including generating codes, generating images, and so on. So until recently, we heard a lot about in-house AI. So developed by data scientists, by AI specialists to boost businesses. This is normal. So it was either for improving operational excellence, what we call operational excellence, or for improving or even for creating new customer value proposition. But since November last year, we have seen a massive usage of ChatGPT that has for sure fascinated us with its conversational ability. It's very impressive, but also its capacity to make up answers even when it is not sure. So this is, I think, a very important aspect to discuss here. So in your opinion, what are the implications of generative AI? And here we are talking about ChatGPT for enterprise architecture.
I think the best way to look at this is by a phrase that was used some time ago by the CEO of Google. And what he said was, when somebody was asking him about the results coming back from their AI engine, he says, well, the AI engine is hallucinating. Now, the phrase that I like to use is not hallucinating, but it's making mistakes. It's making mistakes. And so what we have to recognize is that these engines are trained on, or should be trained on, there's 4 different types of data. The most common data that these engines are being trained on is general internet data. And I think it goes without saying that there's questionable data out there on the internet. There's no doubt about that.
I agree.
And if these engines are being trained on that, they actually multiply the effects of bad data because they train upon themselves. The second class of information is something that all of us need to be conscious of, and that is the use of data that is copyrighted, owned by some organization, and used without permission. Now, what we have to recognize, that's copyrighted data, trademark data, and I think that if you explore a little bit, you know the number of legal aspects and lawsuits that are already being filed. And what we're suggesting, it's important to our audience, is to recognize is that if someone robs a bank and you are the one driving the getaway car, you're going to jail too. So we need to be a little cautious about using that data. Now, let's be a little positive here for a moment. The third type of data is data that I call a mutual exchange of information. So you provide us with, let's say, your email address, and we provide you with an article that you can use. We call that an equal exchange of information. The fourth is the one that we really need to think about, and that is best practices. And to be a little bit direct, best practices cost money. They are not on the internet. So what we need to recognize is we have a very powerful engine, very powerful engine. What data are we using? And that's why we need to be cautious about these models. And let me close out this discussion here just a moment and say there is no verifiable research that we found that shows that large amounts of data is the answer. It's the quality of the data, not the quantity, especially when it's training itself on these things. Very powerful things that we can do. So I want to separate these engines into 2 parts, the processing and the data. Let's use the processes on our own data.
I completely agree with you. I think there's like quality in, quality out at the end. But the fact is that that ChatGPT, as I said, has impressed us with its response capabilities. And we have even seen stories that ChatGPT was able to pass medical and law exams. So it's like kind of a ChatGPT was able to learn some of these best practices in somehow. So this has lead to a surge in enthusiasm to share everything with it, including sometimes confidential or intellectual property related to here company informations. So this means that I know that sharing data with a public ChatGPT, with OpenAI, that users use this data to retrain these AI systems. And so you refer to this phenomenon as shadow AI. So that brings me to the next question. So could you shed light on your perspective on this topics?
So the term that we discussed here, we call it shadow AI. And that goes back to the days of shadow IT. Mm-hmm. And of course, that isn't long ago. And it's basically the stakeholders, the business personnel, either because of frustration or because of curiosity, not going through the normal technology channels to do something. So this is common. This is common. We all play, and I call it, we play in a sandbox. So organizations, what we're suggesting to organizations is they make a sandbox. In other words, they build an area that is separate from the normal channels in their company, not on the same network, not on the same computers, completely separate, where the staff can explore things in a very controlled and non-threatening to the company manner. So shadow IT is happening. It's the business people and the technology people going and using and trying these things because they're so easy to download. And there's nothing wrong with that. We and the people using this have to recognize the downside is that once it's out there, that data, it's out there for everyone to see.
And that's why, so you mentioned secure AI in a private enterprise called what you call enterprise AI. And I would just to mention that it's not for free. So the organization, I know that ChatGPT is public and some of the version is free, but to be able to use this securely AI ChatGPT, so the organizations have to put that in place and encourage the usage of this version of customized ChatGPT. For example, in Azure, Microsoft, they are proposing that in order to somehow minimize the risk of sharing enterprise data. And I think it's a very important point here to mention that there is an alternative of that. It's what you call enterprise AI.
I don't know if we've coined the term, but we call it EAI, is what we believe the future is in. And I'm going to change the A and the I also. We believe the correct term is Enterprise Augmented Information or Enterprise Augmented Intelligence. That's really what the organization is looking for. If you look up the word artificial, it's something you actually don't want to do because it means it's fake.
You're right.
So I know that sometimes we put names on things, but truly, EAI, Enterprise Augmented Information, is the power of these new engines if we think about it as a tool in our enterprise with good data. Look at the power that comes from an architected environment. Once again, it starts off with an architected environment that drives the implementation through EAI.
This is exactly what I wanted to mention next, is your term about augmented intelligence. And you shared that 2 years ago in your Real Talk podcast, that AI is here to augment our intelligence, and we must take advantage of it properly with best practices, as we just mentioned before. I think it's a new world. We are entering a new world of AI, and we can't bypass it. So now organizations must integrate it and if AI, including generative AI here, is securely integrated into businesses, it could offer an alternative of the capabilities we have in public domain, as we said, and this would allow stakeholders to take advantage of these AI capabilities and enhance their ability to in their daily job. But however, with this comes fears of people being replaced by AI. So, in your opinion, what is the role of AI here in enhancing human capabilities? If you could share with us your thought about augmented intelligence, and how can we leverage augmented intelligence to drive greater innovation and efficiency?
So I'm going to give two analogies, which I think are very important. My career spans a number of decades, and I remember in Detroit, Michigan, I'm from the Detroit, Michigan area, automobile area, there was the dream of what they called a lights out factory. You put a number of parts in the factory at one end, and magically and mystically an automobile comes out the other end. A lights out factory, all robotics and things like that. That was in the 80s. This is now 2023. It hasn't happened yet. Most recently, Tesla Corporation in California was thinking the same thing. And Elon Musk and the company said, we can do this. Well, if you look at the factory in California, at the back end of the factory is this massive, almost 1,000-foot addition to the factory because they realized the robotics couldn't do it by itself. Mm-hmm. One final point, automated driving. I had the privilege in 1984 to drive an autonomous, I won't tell you the brand, vehicle, 1984. This is now, once again, 2023. I was driving down the road with my wife, and something in my brain said, this car is not stopping at this red light. I don't know exactly what happened. I slammed on the brakes at the last moment, put my heart back into my chest, and pulled over to the side of the road and realized the limitations. I'm enthusiastic, but the limitations. So, for example, the automobile could not see ahead of the car in front of me. You and I sitting in the driver's seat, you can peer multiple lanes of cars out farther and anticipate what is going on. So I love technology. I have more technology toys probably than most people, but I also recognize the limitations. So what we have to realize is reskilling. Instead of picking things in a warehouse as human beings, the people in the warehouse are going to be driving the robotic arms. Different set of skills going on here. Maintenance, training, enhancements. Yes. And that has gone on throughout history. There has been skill displacement since the agricultural days for humanity. The number of farmers there are today compared to 100 years ago, same type of situation. This is the first time technologists feel, I'll use the phrase, threatened a little bit. Yeah. Because we're kind of young. It's training and education rather than trying to stop the progress because it's already out there. So let's harness that.
Yeah, you're right, and awesome, because you are really in the logic of the talk, because this brings me to the next topics about awareness and the training to address the AI limitation and security. So I believe that most people think of AI mainly from a technological perspective, and sometimes have unrealistic expectation of it. Something like, let's hire some data scientists and magically AI will solve many of our current challenges. So unfortunately, that's not the case. It's much more complex than that. So it's about how aligning AI with the organization's strategy, ensuring that various AI applications integrate well with the data and the processes of the company, and most importantly, how it's used by different stakeholders. So one of the important point here is to emphasize is the significance of people's skills in the equation. So we discussed AI security and the importance of enterprise AI, but it is also about, as you mentioned, so the knowledge that people have in the organization about the systems, so the awareness and training. And when talking about ChatGPT here, for example, there is also an aspect about how to get the full potential of this generative AI. And we are talking about some new jobs like prompt engineer and the use of AI responsibly. So given all these aspects, so my question is, how do you see the role of awareness? I think you mentioned that, but just to elaborate more about the role of awareness and training in ensuring the successful and sustained AI integration with organizations.
I know the conference, and I'm not trying to overplay enterprise architecture, but it starts with enterprise architecture. Enterprise architecture is what provides us with an understanding of our, if I can use the analogy, DNA. Every organization, just like a human being, has a DNA. Once we understand that, then we can harness that with AI. That's the power that we're talking about. So real enterprise architecture provides the descriptive representations of the difference between our organization and another one, and then we can apply the AI engine to it. So what we need to do is to train more people in enterprise architecture and then have those people look at the AI tools. Notice what I said, tools, and apply those. And that's the training and education that's required. So we suggest that most organizations are still in the mode of what we call handcrafting, writing programs.
Yeah.
We're going to move forward and use these EA-driven AI tools.
Yeah, good.
And that's what's going to move us forward.
We came up to the end of our discussion. Thank you, Sam. So we covered so many topics in AI and EA. Before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or words for our audience?
I would like to just summarize what we have to recognize. All of us are in the internet age, and the internet facilitates transactions. Software provides tools. AI is going to use the data now to drive decisions. How, though? By building models that map the relationships between all of this data that's out there to make patterns, to make predictions, to drive decisions. So this is where we have to recognize that this is going to facilitate what you and I are doing. So let's have some fun out there, but recognize where we are as far as the maturity of this whole area. I think that's the lesson we need to recognize.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you, Sam. And I would like to thank the audience for their attention and participation. I hope that our discussion has provided you with insightful takeaways for integrating properly and securely AI in your EA journey. And before we conclude, I would like to introduce the next session, a roundtable addressing the challenges of cyber resilience. So this session will be moderated by Paul Estrach, and it's promised to be an engaging and informative discussion. So thank you again for joining us today, and I hope you enjoying the rest of the Mega EA Exchange Conference.